Hi everyone, Miss Meek here. Today we're going to talk about ratio tables. A ratio table or a ratio tables, sometimes you have to make more than one. Ratio tables are a way to organize your ratios. So if you have multiple ratios, a multiple set of equivalent ratios actually, it is a way to organize all of that information with labels so that way you can find actually missing pieces of information. So ratio tables is a table full of equivalent ratios. So let's take a look at that. How can I fill these two ratio tables here with equivalent ratios? So number one, it talks about how we have sugar and we have flour. So every time that I have 2 tablespoons of sugar, I have 3 tablespoons of flour. So let's fill this up with equivalent ratios. What would happen if I had 4 tablespoons of sugar? Well, 2 times 2 is that 4, so that means if I multiply this bottom flour number by 2 as well, it will tell me how many tablespoons of flour I would need. So if I had 4 tablespoons of sugar, I would need 6 tablespoons of flour. So again, this is equivalent ratios, okay? 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. And so I would keep going. What else could I do? Well, if I multiply 2 times 3 here, and I had 6 tablespoons of sugar, that would mean I would need 9 tablespoons of flour. So again, I'm creating these equal equivalent ratios to fill up my table. All of these ratios can simplify back down to the original starting ratio, which was 2/3. So that is what a ratio table is. It is a table full of equivalent ratios. Let's take a look at number 2. I have 1/4. If I were to have 2 containers of soap to do cleaning, that would mean that I would need, if I have 1 container of soap for every 4 sponges, and I had 2 containers of soap, that would mean I would need 8 containers of sponges. So again, if I multiply this top by 2, I am multiplying the bottom by 2 in order to keep that ratio equivalent. All right, what happens if I decide that I would like to have 3 containers of soap? Well, for every 1 container of soap, I have 4 sponges. So if I am multiplying this 1 times 3, I have to multiply 4 times 3, and that means I'm going to have 12 sponges there in order to keep the ratio of sponges to soap to sponges to be the same. Now, where does this come in handy? Well, you can actually use ratio tables to find missing pieces of information. All right, so for example, number 1, if I have 20 hamburgers and only 14 buns, okay, and they want to know how many buns will I have if I have 60 hamburgers, we actually can see a pattern here. What can I do to 20 to make it become a 60? Well, I can multiply it by 3. If I multiply the top number by 3, in order to keep that ratio equivalent, I have to multiply the bun number, that 14, by 3 as well. And when I do that, I find out that I'm going to have 42 buns. 14 times 3 is 42. So that's how many buns is missing from my table. Same thing, I can use multiplying, and I can also actually use division. So if you take a look at number 2 down here, what do I have to do to 20 to make it become a 5? Well, I can divide it by 4. To keep everything nice and equivalent, I will divide the beets number by 4 as well and find out that if I have 5 hours, that I'm going to have 2 beets up there. So again, what's really cool about ratio tables is it's a table full of equivalent ratios. So if you can figure out one of the numbers, you just have to do that same multiplying or dividing operation to the number that you're missing, and you can actually find that missing piece of information. So they're really cool. They're like almost little puzzles for you to solve. As we continue on, sometimes we have to divide to go backwards to get friendlier numbers for us to use, and then multiply to go forward. So let's take a look at a couple 2-step ratio table problems right here. So on number 1, it says cookies. I have 8 cookies. I want to know if I have 10 cookies, how many calories that's going to be. Well, 8 times 10, or 8 divided by something, 8 times something doesn't equal 10, and 8 divided by something doesn't equal 10. So there's no easy pathway for me to get 8 to equal a 10. So let's try to work backwards and find maybe some nicer numbers that I could work with. So instead of 8, what if I divide this by something that I can divide 8? It has to be something I can divide 8 and 80 by. So what if I divide 8 by 2? Because if I divide 8 by, let's do 4. Let's divide 8 by 4. And if I divide 8 by 4, okay, that will give me a 2. Okay, now is there something that I can multiply times 2 to get to 10? Yeah, times 5. All right, so what I just did right there is I created a pathway to make 8 become a 10 for my ratio table. Now I just follow that pathway on the bottom and I will discover my missing number. So 80 divided by 4, let's see, that is going to be 20. And then 20 times 5 is 100. So that tells me that if I have 10 cookies, that is 100 calories. So again, we can create pathways using division and multiplication, only division and multiplication, okay, to make my numbers equal what they need to equal. All right, let's take a look here at number 2, okay. Nothing times 8 gives me 28. And nothing that I can divide 8 by is going to make me have 28 either. So I'm going to have to create a different pathway. So let's see. Let's try dividing 8 by, what's a good number for 8 and for 14? 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then 4 times 7 is 28. There we go. We have a pathway created now to get 8 to equal 28. So let's do 14 divided by 2 up here on the top. That's 7. And then 7 times 7 on the top there as well tells me that my time is going to be 49. And that could be minutes or hours. I'm going to assume hours since we're talking about reading books here. So I can read 28 books in 49 hours. Okay, so again, once you create that pathway to get that 8 to equal 28, you can just copy that pathway on the top there and find out that missing piece of information. Now, the last skill that we have to know how to do here with ratio tables is we have to be able to create our own ratio table to solve problems. So it says, at a shelter, a 24-pound bag of dog food will feed 36 dogs a day. How many days would a 16-pound bag of dog food last? So in order to solve this, I'm going to make my own ratio table. 2 things that we have to know is there is a rate in here. The rate is right here, 24-pound bag of food will feed 36 dogs a day. That right there is your rate. So for my labels, I want to use pounds of food and days, okay, or 36. I want to use the number of dogs fed, okay? So I want to use the number of dogs fed. So really what this question should ask is how many dogs, not days. I must have wrote it incorrectly. Let me fix that right there. So how many, let me rewrite this problem so it actually makes sense. How many dogs would a 16 bag of food feed? Let's change our problem there so it actually makes sense. All right, so I'm going to use pounds as a label for my ratio table, and that's pounds of food. All right, and I'm going to use dogs, number of dogs there as the bottom part of my ratio table. So let's now fill in the numbers. We have 24 pounds, so that number is going to go on top. And we know that 24 pounds feeds 36 dogs. So this right here is our original rate. And so those 2 numbers need to go together in the ratio table. And make sure you're lining them up with the correct labels. 24 is a pound number. 36 is a dog number. It says how many dogs. So when it comes to the rest of my ratio table, I'm missing a dog number. So that's where my question mark is going to be. And it says, how many dogs would a 16-pound bag of food feed? So 16 is the number that goes above my question mark. And again, it goes on top because it is a pound number. It's pounds of food, okay? So now our whole goal is to get 24 to equal 16. Well, 24 divided by nothing gives me 16, and 24 times nothing is going to give me 16, so not a whole number anyway. So we're going to have to create a pathway, meaning I need to divide 24 by a number that will give me something friendlier that I can actually get to 16. I think I'm going to, if I get a 4 here, I can do 4 times 4 equals 16. So I'm actually going to divide 24 by 6. Okay? When I divide 24 by 6, I get that 4 that I wanted, and then I can do 4 times 4, and that gives me my 16. So there's my pathway to get 24 to equal 16. All right, now I'm going to repeat that pathway on the bottom here. So 36 divided by 6. And guys, when you're picking your number to divide by, make sure that it works not only for 24, but also for 36. Because if your number only works for the top, all right, it's not going to do you any favors, because then you're going to be having a really hard time finding that missing piece of information on the bottom. 36 divided by 6 is 6. And then 6 times 4, again, I'm just following that top pathway up here. So what I did up here, I'm following on the bottom. 6 times 4 is 24. So what I found out is that 16 pounds of dog food will feed 24 dogs. So that's my missing piece of information. So ratio tables are really good because you can use them to set up problems in order to find those missing pieces of information. Because again, it's just a table full of equivalent ratios. I hope this video helped you figure out how to solve for missing pieces of information using ratio tables. I will talk to you later. Bye.